Hi, my name is Caroline. My journey began at the age of 5 when I was visited by a group of beings who came from the worlds beyond. I called them my spirit family. To others, they were my imaginary friends. Many children have imaginary friends. Mine were real. They appeared as a bright light, and they said they came from another planetary system beyond this galaxy and this universe. They came from a place they call the Source. They were so loving and kind and always emanated what I would call unconditional love. They taught me things like communicating telepathically, healing with energy, seeing things beyond what humans could see and sense. My experiences opened me up to the mysteries of the universe and the science of the unknown. And so I spent the past 15 years of my life sharing my knowledge and experience and helping others with healing and guidance about the infinite power of the human consciousness.
The fact that we are interested in this subject is we're interested in understanding who we are. A lot of us feel that we don't belong, we don't fit, we're probably not from this planet, we want to go back to the stars.
And along the way, I also listened to thousands of people from around the world describe their contact experiences to me. Soon enough, I realized all these people who did not know each other had a story that was strikingly similar. And so it was time to share the contact phenomenon with the rest of the world. More importantly, I was now on a mission to bring scientific validation to my story, as well as others.
There was a craft floating right above the freeway, maybe 50 feet above the freeway, 100 feet above the freeway, massive.
And it was close enough that we could see the porthole windows and faces in the window.
We were floating up to a round craft that was quite low overhead.
This light was like a glowing, expanding energy, and my whole room became illuminated with this morphing, multicolored energy.
I'm going up into the air and into a ship which had a light coming down from the center underneath.
They would pick me up out of the bed and they would bring me aboard their glowing spaceship.
They take my consciousness out of the body and move it to the mothership.
At that point, I then went on board the craft.
I would be there with hundreds of other people my age.
And they would bring me to the planet and introduce me to other kids my age, and we would play together.
I get these calls of people who say, I saw you on the Orion mothership.
I actually met different people on the craft that have come into my life now as an adult.
I was dragged into this kicking and screaming by John Mack, who told me that so many of the people who came to him for psychotherapy, reporting these experiences about the same story.
Dr. Rudy Shield is an emeritus astronomer at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center of Astrophysics. His expertise involves the study of black hole physics, but also as it relates to consciousness. These hundreds of people showing up on a spaceship, where is the spaceship parked?
One is the big mega ship, and that operates well above our atmosphere. And it then discharges little zooming spacecraft that are the little pickup craft. NASA scientists witnessed the fact that 3 of the little shuttlecraft approached a much larger ship, something like a blimp, and he said they approached a port to it and then sort of orbited around and eventually spun in. He was working on trying to understand the propulsion of these devices. Where do all of these spacecraft come from, and why are so many different kinds or flavors of spacecraft reported? All makes sense to me. There are more than one civilization visiting us.
It is now clear that contact is a worldwide phenomenon.
The majority of people who I have examined, and I've looked at 1,150 different abduction events, the majority of those events have been when people were awake.
And so it's been about 2,500 regressions that I have conducted to people's experiences directly with extraterrestrial beings.
This happens to people around the world, regardless of their background, regardless of their educational level, regardless of anything.
After 20 years of looking at 3,000 individuals, I found out that this wasn't rare, that this was happening across the globe.
This is not an American phenomenon. This is not a Western phenomenon. This is a global phenomenon.
And it didn't matter what your belief system was, it didn't matter, you know, religious beliefs, scientific beliefs, what age you were, what professions you had. It was doctors, nurses, teachers, it was pilots, it was policemen, it was housewives and farmers and little kids.
I have worked with people from Mali, from Pakistan, from Brazil, Chile, from Europe, and from everywhere else. It's astonishing how many people all around the world all saying the same thing.
Numbers of people in America that are beginning to wake up to the fact that, oh my goodness, that was an extraterrestrial contact.
There's not only thousands, there's potentially millions of people out there that are living this double life.
Millions and growing.
According to the famous Drake equation, astronomers think planets in our galaxy with intelligent life could number anywhere from thousands to millions. However, in 1950, from a skeptical point of view, the nuclear physicist Enrico Fermi posed the question that if intelligent life is so numerous around the galaxy and the universe, well, where is everybody? Why hasn't there been contact? The answer is there has been contact, but showing that contact happens may depend on expanding our idea of what contact really is. And if we knew what these intelligent beings may look like, perhaps they would become more real to us and shed more light on the variety of species that is possible within the universe.
He was a brown being with big gold eyes, and he had slits in his eyes.
I thought they were very elegant, about 7 feet tall.
She is what I would describe as a tall, pure cream white being, and I'm talking the color of milk.
Very narrow, thin people.
The skin texture was very different. It was a lot rougher, a bit reptile in appearance.
His skin color is very dark bluish, I would say, with scales.
And they didn't have ears. They had these kind of giraffe-looking things coming off of their head, like membranes.
With blue skin, like you see in Hindu art.
And the usual idea of a gray alien as the quintessential extraterrestrial has become too small of a concept.
The faces were very human.
Similar features to the human, but their heads I would compare to the ancient Neanderthal head.
And they have huge black eyes that sort of wrap around the side of their head.
And he was very thin, had a long, thin neck.
And the eyes, albeit they were very large, they were actually human eyes.
They were long and rod-like and sort of wrinkly gray.
There are about 60 different types of beings that I've been aware of.
Here in the United States, it's certainly Andromedan, Syrian, gray, Arcturian. And in terms of South America, there is such a deep-rooted Apunian.
There are Pleiadian beings and beings that we consider Nordics because they look like Scandinavian humans.
And don't forget the angels, the archangels. There's also beings coming from very far away in the universe. These beings are very large. They have a consciousness mass that is so large that they don't appear as beings. They appear as just a ball of light. Some of these are the Melchizedeks, the celestial guardians, the gravity and power controllers, the planetary aides, divine sons, and the life architects. Now, these beings are typically not recognized by humans because they don't have any physical features. They simply appear as light, but they are beings nonetheless. The denser type beings seem to appear in people's bedrooms, but other types of beings can appear and communicate with us intradimensionally, which means beyond our three-dimensional reality.
There are many ways contact happens, and that's not just, the abductee, contactee. In the day, they may communicate as mediums do, clairvoyants do. They may do it with spirits, but they'll also do it with ETs as well.
An interdimensional being, meaning any being that we cannot see through 3D. In other words, right now I'm looking at you, but I can also see other beings there, actually. There's tons of them, by the way, outside the room and in here.
We're also talking about interdimensionals, extradimensionals, hyperdimensionals, and probably a lot more that we're not aware of.
Sometimes some of the beings seem to be more dense and physical, and sometimes they are radiating, glowing with light.
I couldn't make out features because there's so much light around it, but it was orange and red light, like solid, pulsating light around the being. They basically said, we are multidimensional beings, we can go in between dimensions, and we exist on our physical plane in a higher octave than you do.
It felt like an angelic consciousness, and they describe themselves as being part of the Arcturian collective consciousness. They're like a group of beings that are actually everywhere. They're in every dimension. They're at every point in time.
In your common language, refer to us as the Arcturians. They said, but for your own understanding, recognize that we do not come from your star, Arcturus. They said, we in fact come from different dimensions of your own planet. And we are, in essence, future versions of yourself.
This phenomenon is not new. There have been contact experiences with angels, archangels, and beings from the stars in numerous historical accounts and biblical scriptures since the beginning of human civilization. These experiences are described as both physical and intradimensional. Could these beings be the gods among us? If we are still asking the questions, it means we have not had clear evidence of the phenomenon of contact. I'm going to attempt to bring compelling scientific validation to these claims. Is that even possible? Dr. Dean Radin is chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences. For over 2 decades, he has been engaged in research on consciousness and has conducted numerous laboratory experiments on paranormal phenomena.
So what you do is you take the experiences that people talk about and you operationalize it. You squish it into a form where we can know with high certainty whether the effect is real or not under controlled conditions.
A compelling piece of evidence comes from a famous NASA mission, Apollo 14, and the mission's pilot, Edgar Mitchell.
Edgar Mitchell provided an experiment that could test the speed of consciousness. So he arranged with his Houston handlers that they would take the standard psychological deck of cards. Each card had a single simple object on it, like a gold star. Something of that kind that can be reduced to 2 words and a single concept. When they did the experiment with a clock present, the handler in Houston said, "Okay, Edgar, I'm turning the card." And Edgar would concentrate and say, "Gold star." and that to the moon should take 4 seconds at the speed of light. And then Edgar clicking his microphone and saying, "Gold star," that should take 4 seconds to transmit back to the Earth. So it should have been a total 8-second transfer time. In fact, they did it in 4 seconds, to the astonishment of all concerned.
What you're saying is that the speed of thought is instantaneous, meaning faster than the speed of light.
That's exactly the point.
If Edgar Mitchell was able to communicate telepathically with Earth across 240,000 miles, then there must be a mechanism that allowed him to do so. And if telepathic communication happened between two humans across time and space, then this could be the key to understanding telepathic contact with all other intelligent life. Is it possible that we may be equipped with an internal mechanism that allows us to communicate telepathically? The best way to find out is to look within our own human DNA. For the past 25 years, Dr. Glenn Ryan has pursued a career in neuroscience, bioelectromagnetics, and DNA research at prestigious institutions such as Harvard and Stanford medical schools.
DNA, of course, is a very interesting molecule. If you're going to study the effect of consciousness on a biological system, you have to choose a biological system that will be relevant for the mainstream, but will be sensitive enough to pick up the energies of consciousness. This is what we're studying, and the biological effects. So I chose a particular system, and that is DNA. What this machine does is it scans many different frequencies. You excite the DNA with a voltage spike at different frequencies, and then you measure the induced current in the second electrode, and that's what's displayed here. I would say that the end physiological, psychological, emotional, or spiritual effect that we might have in response to interaction with an extraterrestrial being, or some spiritual interaction with a god, all these different possible entities could affect our physiological body at any level. And yes, of course, DNA is just part of that whole gestalt. If it happens within our own body, it can clearly happen between one person and another person. This is a new experiment. We have the DNA that has not been treated by Caroline. Your turn.
Okay. Since I was a child, I've been able to bring energy to others to produce healing. I will now attempt to bring the energy of a spirit being and see if that would affect the DNA sample in any measurable way. If I succeed, then this could bring scientific validation to the contact phenomenon with beings from other dimensional realities. Okay, it's done. So when are you going to get those results?
Oh, as soon as I can. I have them. You'll be the first to know. I promise that.
Dr. Ryan's linking of DNA to any form of spirit or intradimensional interaction could validate scientifically the contact phenomenon. But as always in science, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
We're going to just have to get used to some new physics that's operative out there. But the big problem is because the university crowd won't deal with consciousness, and I could stack books as high as the ceiling that all contain the sentence, but of course we don't have an understanding of consciousness.
Most scientists are still caught up in what I call the classical paradigm, the classical worldview, according to which such phenomena should be impossible.
I mean, I wouldn't want people to walk away thinking that they can just think their way to changing their DNA. That would be an abuse of our current understanding. And I'm certainly not attempting to diminish or degrade that way of thinking. All I'm saying is that there is no current scientific evidence. But just because I say there's no scientific evidence doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means that we haven't found a way to look at it yet.
Experiencers and contactees report powerful transformation when they come in contact with extraterrestrial and non-human presence. But what other physical evidence can we gather from these accounts?